Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Today, we're going to be reacting to Caroline Leavitt and her press conference today. It happened earlier today, this morning, but I'm just going to react to it in real time. I didn't see this all the way through. I see it's 31 minutes long, so we're going to watch it together. Excuse me. So we're going to watch it together and see what we have to say. And see what she has to say. There's always something to take off with all the progress that's being made by this administration. She always has some good nuggets to react to. So here goes without further ado. Let's listen to Caroline.
Let's start today by addressing the U.S. Army soldiers who went missing while conducting a mission to repair and tow an immobilized tactical vehicle in Lithuania in the early hours of March 25th. Tragically, 3 soldiers were found deceased in Lithuania yesterday, and it pains me to confirm that today, the 4th soldier was also found deceased. The President, the Secretary of Defense, and the entire White House are praying for the victims' friends and family during this unimaginable time. This is another stark reminder of the selfless sacrifice of our brave military men and women who risk their lives around the world every day to keep us safe. God bless them. On another note, at our southern border, there is more massive news. Southwest border crossings in March fell to the lowest level in American history, down 94% from March of last year.
Well, that's just a little bit too fast. I know I'm a little slow on the uptick. What happened to our guys in Lithuania again? I mean, is the investigation sounds like it's ongoing, but how do our servicemen get what they must have got ambushed? Something happened to them. Was it an accident? Was they hijacked? What the hell happened to them? Maybe I missed something. Maybe I have to listen to it again. But there certainly has got to be more information than that. It's tragic, this news, but maybe I just missed it. But something happened to those guys, and our soldiers are usually not caught off guard like that. So maybe it was a setup, maybe it was a tragic accident. But I don't think she said anything specific other than we lost some guys, which is tragic. Okay, so let's talk about the border. That's where she's at right now.
Last year, under President Biden, when 137,000 illegal aliens poured across our wide open southern border. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, Border Patrol agents are now back to doing the jobs they signed up for, securing the border, rather than serving as travel agents for illegal aliens. The Los Angeles Times.
Well, listen, you got to tie this to what Doge and Elon Musk said yesterday when they talk about founding the way they use Social Security and certain things to actually get these illegals into the country to eventually have them voting for Democrats. I mean, this was the 4 years. A lot of people kind of already knew what they were trying to do, but we have evidence, right? It sounds like we have actual evidence that the grand plan of the Democratic Party was to flood our country with illegals, give them a whole bunch of free stuff, get them hooked on, unfortunately, like so many people at the lower levels of the rung, get hooked on handouts and things of that nature, and they tend to vote for the people who are feeding them. And that's what they were going to do. That was the plan. This is one of the reasons why they hate Trump so much, because the truth of the matter is he threw a monkey wrench in those plans, because underneath that, a lot of Americans understood what the okie doke was, and that there's going to be they were trying to have like a bloodless coup to gain power in perpetuity by just putting numbers and numbers in America, destroying America in order to stay in power. That's what the Democrats were getting ready to do.
And captured the Trump effect on the border with a recent article. Their headline read, "California-Mexico border, once overwhelmed, is now nearly empty." With so few migrants coming into the U.S., they wrote, "Shelters that once served migrants have completely closed." Deportations of illegal aliens who threaten the safety of the American people are also continuing at a rapid pace. Over the weekend, the United States military transferred a group of 17 violent criminals from the Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorist organizations to El Salvador. And an illegal alien who was released by the Biden administration into our country was just arrested in Georgia and charged with the horrific killing of Camelia Williams, a mother of 5 and grandmother. The suspect has now been indicted on charges of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, rape, aggravated sexual battery, and necrophilia, which, for those who don't know, necrophilia is a sexual obsession with a corpse. This suspect was ordered to be removed in July 2023, but the Biden administration allowed him to stay. This case represents the ruthless murderers, rapists, and pedophiles who Joe Biden and Democrats let into our country.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the insidiousness of the Democrats to try to stay in power, they didn't mind, they didn't care how many citizens were murdered, destroyed, harmed by unleashing some of the worst people in the world on the American citizens. I don't see how anybody could ever vote these people back into power, right? And unfortunately, they have a chance to take back over the House in a little while with what's going on in Wisconsin. And we can only pray that they lose that race. But man, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy about what's going on and what the insidiousness of that party. And as being a black man, what really bothers me is why 89 to 90% of black people believe in the bullshit that these guys are talking. They're outright demonic. And somehow, some way, shape, or fashion, we need to get more black people off that plantation and thinking independently. You don't have to like the Republicans, but you can't tell me you don't see the okey doke by the Democrats.
Over the past 4 years through our southern border. They should have never been here in the first place. Keep this in mind the next time you see Democrats protesting future illegal alien removals from our country. President Trump is focused on fulfilling his greatest obligation, to keep the American people safe and to defend our country from violent invaders. Looking ahead to tomorrow, April 2nd, 2025, will go down as one of the most important days in modern American history. Our country has been one of the most open economies in the world, and we have the consumer base hands down, the best consumer base. But too many foreign countries have their markets closed to our exports. This is fundamentally unfair. The lack of reciprocity contributes to our large and persistent annual trade deficit that's gutted our industries and hollowed out key workforces. But those days of America, beginning tomorrow, being ripped off are over. American workers and businesses will be put first under President Trump, just as he promised on the campaign trail. The president's historic action tomorrow will improve American competitiveness in every area of industry, reduce our massive trade deficits, and ultimately protect our economic and national security. President Trump's economic vision is rooted in common sense. America will offer companies the lowest taxes, energy costs, regulations if they make their products right here in the United States and hire American workers for the job. It's simple.
Sorry,
if you make your product in America, you will pay no tariffs. We have already seen a number of the largest companies in the world respond to this economic.
But before we go into that, one of the things somebody asked me yesterday, and I'm gonna put a link to the live I did on another channel, the Black Man Unfiltered channel, about the divestment off the Democratic plantation, and TDS is not a strategy. But they asked me about tariffs. I am not an expert on tariffs, and most the rank and file people are mentioning tariffs. When you hear the layman on the street and all that, nobody really talks about that. You can see how the programming of the left starts getting to in people's mind. Well, food prices, everything's going to go up. How can that be more important to people, really, okay, than understanding that the world has been taking advantage of us as Americans on a grand scale? That our products, when we export them, are being tariffed out of the market, and those products from those countries are coming in, almost tariff free. So this tomorrow, when he puts reciprocal tariffs on there, yeah, the market's going to perturbate, but it always comes to an equilibrium. And then from then, all the smart investors, if you have dry powder You wait a while for that market to hit that base, that new base, and there's going to be so many bargains out there. You know why? Because these tariffs are not necessarily, it won't take a great company and make it into a bad company. It's just going to be a great company at a cheaper stock price. And that's when you're supposed to pounce. And so, listen, if you're a long-term investor, you're a young person, your 20s, early 30s, and you got 30, 40 years of investing to do before you retire, this is just a blip on the radar. If you're a senior citizen, you know, you weren't supposed to have your stuff in too many high risk stuff when you're only a couple of years away from retirement, or you got to protect your income. You got to have a better advisor to say, hey, listen, you know what? Maybe I'll just be maybe 50% in really safe stuff and maybe 50% aggressive or 25% aggressive. You don't get a good enough return, but if you want to protect your principles, you have to be positioned for that. But if you got years and years and years to invest, this is just an opportunity to buy stocks at a cheap price until the market levels off and takes off again, like it always does. And if it doesn't, that means we got bigger issues over the next 6 months. Anyway, let's keep rolling.
Approach. For example, Project Stargate, led by Japan-based SoftBank and US-based OpenAI and Oracle, announced a $500 billion private investment in the United States-based artificial intelligence infrastructure. Apple announced a $500 billion investment in US manufacturing and training. NVIDIA announced it will invest hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 4 years in US-based manufacturing. And the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, announced a $100 billion investment in US-based chips and manufacturing. These are just a few of the investment announcements that have already been made, and it is clear that President Trump's America First approach is already working.
See, this is the narrative that needs to sink into people's head. Well, we're putting tariffs on here. That's a negotiation point, right? We have all of this business coming back into America, right? Could we start to rebuild our manufacturing infrastructure? And, you know, it's a lot of big numbers, but it's not enough. But the tariffs in and itself, the way they're going to start out is really our negotiating position with the rest of the world. And once those tariffs start to impact their economies, like, you know, even if it's impacting ours, we have the buffers to kind of to wait those other guys out. And once the tariffs we have on their products start to say, wait a minute, maybe we need to come and renegotiate with America for better deals, where we can say, okay, I'm gonna tariff your stuff at a lower rate. You make sure you take the 300-400% tariffs you have on my thing down to something reasonable. How about that? And that's the kind of shit that's the kind of position he's trying to put us in. And yeah, there'll be some short-term pain for that. But let me tell you, you know, at some points you got to go ahead and pull that bandage off, right? So we got to stop being an ATM for the world. So I can dig this. You know what? We've survived worse, to tell you the truth. We've survived the Biden administration. We could survive a few tariffs for a few months till we get a negotiating deal with the rest of the world.
And our new media seat today is Mark Halperin, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Two Way, a new live video platform that builds communities around interactive conversations with leaders and content creators from every subject area. Mark and his colleagues welcome all voices into discussions that are spirited but respectful. They have over 37.5 million video views, over 3.6 million watch time hours since the platform began just last year. This is new media in its truest sense, allowing the people to ask questions, make comments, and be an active part of engagement on the most important issues facing the country and our world. With that, Mark, please kick us off and welcome to the briefing room.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. I'll ask you a question about tariffs and then one from one members of our community.
Sure.
About education. It's perceived by some that companies or countries, if they change their policies either before tomorrow or after tomorrow, can have the president alter what he's planning for that country or that sector. Is that a possibility? And if so, what factors the president consider in making those changes?
Well, the ultimate change for these companies and these countries, Mark, will happen when they decide to do business in the United States of America. And as I just laid out, they will face no tariffs at all if these companies choose to invest here in the United States and to move their production and their manufacturing here to the United States as well. As for tomorrow, the president will be addressing the decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off and American workers off. It has hollowed out our middle class. It has destroyed our heartland, and the president is focused on reshifting our global economy to ensure that America is once again the manufacturing superpower of the world.
So if they do something today or later in the week that's a pledge for future activity, would that be good enough potentially to alter the policy?
Again, the president has been looking at the very unfair trade practices of the past. Certainly, the president is always up to take a phone call, always up for a good negotiation, but he is very much focused on fixing the wrongs of the past and showing that American workers have a fair shake.
So if someone calls after tomorrow and says, hey, I'm ready to make a change, he'd be open to that?
The president is always open to taking calls.
Okay. A question from one of our community members, Katie Reeves, is a school teacher in Wisconsin. She's taught K-8 in public, independent, private, and private schools. And here's what she wanted me to ask you. She says, I see the elimination of the Department of Education as an excellent first step in the improvement of our school system. Do you see any further role the federal government can take beyond this, possibly in promoting the expansion of voucher programs or reducing the influence the teachers' unions hold over our schools?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I want to thank Katie for her service to our country and our nation's children. Being a teacher is the most noble profession that we believe one can have. And the president said in his remarks when he signed the executive order to dismantle the Department of Education that he loves our teachers. And in part, this order is to empower our teachers to have greater decision making in the classroom. Nobody knows our nation's children and our students better than our teachers who are with them every single day. As for the federal government's role, to get to the heart of Katie's question, the president has made it clear to Linda McMahon that we need to find other places within our federal government for critical programs regarding education, Pell Grants, Title IX, lawsuits, etc., civil rights lawsuits. All of that are critical functions, special needs programs, nutrition programs. But there are other places throughout the federal bureaucracy where those things can happen and work. The Department of Education has been a very bloated bureaucracy. We spent trillions of dollars on this department, and for what? Our children are worse off as far as education goes today than they were when this department originated, and that's very concerning to the president. So,
before he goes on about the Department of Education, have you noticed with everything else that the liberal media tries to destroy, tries to come against Trump? The real thing is they really don't have enough smoke on the Department of Education because the numbers are so blaringly bad since it's been created on the educational levels of our children, and how it's getting worse and worse. And most kids who are educated and achieve at the highest level, the more the parents have to be involved from the standpoint that they almost have to either homeschool or pay for private schooling for their kids, even in areas where their taxes are excessive, because they can't really get the learning that's required in the public school system. And the way the Department of Education meted out their rules and regulations, where it's almost one size fit all across the country, knowing that the demographics in area and regions to regions are vastly different. You know, so it was just a bad deal, and everybody kind of ignores the role the Department of Education also had in the rising prices of college education and things of that nature. We pay way too much to educate the people of our future. You know, some of that, I don't think it should be a social program. I don't believe in anything should be free because people will take advantage of it. But these excessive costs to get an education at the highest levels, there is something wrong, fundamentally broken with that, including the loans that people have to get through school and the predatory nature of those loans. So there's a lot of different tentacles to this that need to be fixed. So anyway, I don't think anybody except the unions like Randy Weingarten, who's going to miss the way they could grift the Department of Education. Everybody else in the union is probably going to be better off for it. And they say that the property taxes in certain areas may go up. That may be true. That may be true. But we'll see, because they say some of these programs where the funds are going to continue to flow, as she just mentioned, those children's programs and those special needs programs, they say the money's still going to flow, but through a different conduit. as opposed to a big bloated agency to get it to the people who need it. So we'll see what happens.
Two issues she cited are those of priorities for the president: school education choice, vouchers, and diminishing the role of teachers' unions.
The president is very supportive of both of those things, particularly when it comes to school choice. He has said that school choice is the civil rights issue of our time, and he wants every child, regardless of zip code, socioeconomic status, how much money their parents have, to be able to go to the school of their choosing that best suits their educational needs. And he is going to empower state and local leaders to make those decisions on behalf of our nation's children. Thanks for being here, Mark. Jeff.
Just changing subjects for 1 second. The administration has expressed a complete confidence in how all the deportation flights to El Salvador were conducted. But now that the administration has conceded that there was an error of one Salvadoran national, will there be any reviews conducted? And does the president express any thoughts on the one error that was disclosed in court last night?
Well, first of all, the error that you are referring to was a clerical error. It was an administrative error. The administration maintains the position that this individual who was deported to El Salvador and will not be returning to our country was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang. That is fact number one. Fact number two, we also have credible intelligence proving that this individual was involved in human trafficking. And fact number three, this individual was a member, actually a leader of the brutal MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Fact number four is that foreign terrorists do not have legal protections in the United States of America anymore. And it is within the president's executive authority and power to deport these heinous individuals from American communities. It is a promise he campaigned on. It is a promise he is keeping. And every single person in this room should be grateful for that, considering especially MS-13 is very prevalent and prominent here in the District of Columbia, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And the president, the attorney general, everyone who has been involved in these operations is focused on eradicating these criminals and terrorists from our communities.
The vice president said he was a convicted member of MS-13. What evidence is there to back that up?
There's a lot of evidence, and the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have that evidence, and I saw it this morning. Steve.
Has the president fully made up his mind on the level of tariffs to impose tomorrow? We keep hearing about a 20% flat rate.
The president said last night he has made a decision and a determination. I was with him in the Oval Office earlier, and he is going to announce that decision tomorrow. I don't want to get ahead of the president. This is obviously a very big day. He's with his trade and tariff team right now, perfecting it to make sure this is a perfect deal for the American people and the American worker. And you will all find out in about 24 hours from now.
And are the car tariffs going to go into effect on April 3rd as scheduled?
Correct. Yes, they will.
Okay. And last thing, would you like to respond to the Chinese military drills around Taiwan?
Yes, I would. As a matter of fact, the National Security Council briefed me on this morning, and they said that the president is emphasizing the importance of maintaining peace in the Taiwan Strait, encouraging the peaceful resolution of these cross-strait issues, reiterating our opposition to any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion. That is directly from the National Security Advisor. Just for you, Steve Holland of Reuters. Monica.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Elon Musk this week revealed that Doge found that the Biden administration issued over 2 million social security numbers to illegal aliens, found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the social security system. Has the White House confirmed these numbers with Elon, and is the White House looking into correcting this?
I'm not sure about those specific numbers that Mr. Musk cited. I can tell you what the Social Security Administration has said themselves, according to an Inspector General's report that was conducted last year, showing there was nearly $80 billion worth of fraud in this program. We know for a fact there are individuals who should not be receiving benefits on the Social Security rolls, and this administration is focused on cleaning out the waste, fraud, and abuse in every agency, but particularly in Social Security, to make it stronger for our tax-paying, law-abiding citizens who deserve these entitlements and programs. Because you did bring up Doge, I do want to tout the incredible efforts that have been made at the Environmental Protection Agency. And Administrator Lee Zeldin is just doing a tremendous job. Just yesterday and today it will be going into effect. He announced that taxpayers will be saved $8 million in annual lease costs by moving staff out of the 323,000 square feet of space that the EPA currently occupies, which is completely unnecessary. Yesterday, Administrator Zeldin also announced he will be shutting down a museum that the Biden administration built to tell a selective story about the EPA's history and climate change. It was a real pat on the back to President Biden. And guess how much American taxpayers paid for it? $4 million for this museum that I think only 1,000 visitors saw last year alone. And it will cost American taxpayers $600,000 per year to operate this museum. Well, it's not going to exist anymore. We're going to save taxpayers those critical funds. And Administrator Zeldin is very proud to announce that. And just at EPA alone, and the cuts that they have made, they've saved taxpayers more than $22 billion in wasteful grants and spending. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. When the president goes down to Florida on the weekends, does he ever hear from, there are so many retired folks down in Florida, does he ever hear from any retired Americans who are stressed about these wild swings in the stock market because of the tariff uncertainty? And they're sitting there on fixed income or living off a 401k, and they don't know how much money's going to be left.
Well, certainly they are legitimate concerns, and the president takes those concerns very seriously, and he's addressing them every single day. And tomorrow's announcement is to protect future generations. The senior citizens you mentioned, it's for their kids and their grandkids to ensure that there are jobs here in the United States of America for their children to live the American dream, just like they presumably did. And as for their worries about their 401ks, their Social Security, I just addressed Social Security. This president is always going to protect it for our tax-paying senior citizens. As for their 401ks, look at what President Trump did for you in his first term. He is working on implementing that economic formula every single day by lowering inflation, lowering energy prices, massive deregulatory efforts, while simultaneously effectively implementing tariffs. And they'll hear more about that announcement.
Yeah, a lot of people have to, I can understand the old folks and people who are looking at their 401ks and they want to retire at a certain point, but it's like a year away or 2 years away. I have a buddy in that category. The truth of the matter is, you just have to be patient. If it does cost you another year, it does. If you're in an emergency situation, that's a different standpoint. But the truth of the matter is, throughout all your investing history, you understand that the markets ebb and flow. We're in an actual correction period, because of the uncertainty. But the market was heavy to the upside already. It was due for at least a consolidation. And so if you put the metrics in your head, a consolidation, I think, is anywhere between 0 and 10% over a little period of time where people are taking profits. When it's between 10 and 20%, you're talking about a correction. A consolidation is the first 10%, a correction is the next. And then if it's past 20%, it's called a capitulation. And we're nowhere near the capitulation. Could it get there? Maybe, maybe not. I think right now from its 52-week highs, all the indices are probably down around 14%, 13, 14%, or even a little less right now because the last 2 days the market has been kind of bouncing back a little bit because there's a lot of bargains out there. So I would tell people not to panic. And if you're young, just ride this thing out because you have years and years to invest. And right now, if you're dollar cost averaging, this is a good time for you, especially for long-term investors.
Tomorrow.
And you said that the president right now is with the trade and tariff team. They are very confident that this is all going to work. But what if they're wrong?
They're not going to be wrong. It is going to work. And the president has a brilliant team of advisors who have been studying these issues for decades. And we are focused on restoring the golden age of America and making America a manufacturing superpower. And again, Peter, I would point you to the investments that have already trickled into this country. And the president hasn't even made his tariff announcement yet tomorrow. There have been billions of dollars in private investments from around the world pouring into American communities. What does that look like for those watching at home, for the people you mentioned worried about their own economic circumstances? It means more jobs in your communities, which means more money, more investments, more money in your pocket. That's what the president is committed to. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the president's commitment to tax cuts, which we are counting on Congress to do, especially on Social Security.
And one more.
Sure.
Are the special elections today a referendum on the president?
I think first of all, as you know, I'm a government employee now, so I'm not very much allowed to comment on elections that are taking place. That's something to get used to, having just been on the campaign trail for quite some time. But the president is the leader of the America First movement and the MAGA movement. And that was made very clear on November the 5th when he received nearly 80 million votes. I could also say that it is the constitutional right of every law-abiding American in these places where these elections are being held to vote. And every American should exercise their constitutional rights. Sure.
Thanks, Carolyn. A few
That's
questions
a good way
about
to put
this
it. But, you know,
deportation case. First, I want to clarify
it would
something
be
you said too.
interesting to see what happens with this Wisconsin thing, especially since they want to gerrymander the seats in the House. I don't know how long it would take before they gain majority if they win. I guess it's tonight or tomorrow, whatever. It would be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, the president's still going to be there, you know, but his agenda will mostly be executive orders, because, you know, he's never going to get any cooperation from the Democrats. So it's not a referendum, but it's a blip in the road if they lose those seats. So we'll see how that plays out.
Jeff, a few minutes ago, you said you'd seen evidence that this man was a convicted gang member. In what court was he convicted and for what?
This individual was an MS-13 ringleader. This individual was also engaged in human trafficking. And I'm glad you brought up this point again, because I would like to point out that if you just saw the headline from the insane failing Atlantic magazine this morning, you would think this individual was Father of the Year, living in Maryland, living a peaceful life, when that couldn't be further from the truth. They didn't even mention in the title of that article, or even in the first paragraph, that this individual is an illegal criminal who broke our nation's immigration laws. He is a leader in the brutal MS-13 gang, and he is involved in human trafficking. And now MS-13 is a designated foreign terrorist organization. Foreign terrorists have no legal protections in the United States of America. And this administration is going to continue to deport foreign terrorists and illegal criminals from our nation's interior.
But a judge ordered that he should remain in this country. So are you saying that it is okay to ignore a judge's ruling if you don't like it?
Who does that judge work for?
He's an immigration
It was an
judge.
immigration judge who works for the Department of Justice at the direction of the Attorney General of the United States, whose name is Pam Bondi, who has committed to eradicating MS-13 from our nation's interior. And let me tell you why we've made this commitment. MS-13, may I remind each and every one of you, is a brutal and vicious gang. They raped and strangled a 20-year-old autistic woman to death in Maryland. They hacked 4 people to death with machetes in a park on Long Island. They have kidnapped, sexually tortured, and shot a teenage girl in Texas after she insulted them, allegedly. Killed and mutilated a 17-year-old girl in Virginia, stabbing him 16 times and cutting off his hands. They beheaded and cut out the heart of a man in Washington, D.C. They raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl in California. They sex trafficked a slew of young girls, including one who was just 12 years old. Raped an 11-year-old girl in Brooklyn while her brother was in the room. Sex trafficked a 13-year-old in Maryland and Virginia, miles away from this White House, even beating her 26 times on her backside with a baseball bat. Pressured homeless New Yorkers to undergo unnecessary surgeries such as spinal fusion in order to bolster their fraudulent lawsuits. These are vicious criminals. This is a
keep going.
vicious gang. And I wish that the media would spend just a second of the same time you have spent trying to litigate each and every individual of this gang who has been deported from our country as the innocent Americans whose lives have been lost at the hands of these brutal criminals. We maintain our position, and very strongly so.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, listen, how are these okay, you have to report on the news, right? I guess you could ask questions, but it goes deeper than that. If you ever go and look at the Fort Myers press conference where they had 3 cackling hens crying to protect illegal aliens. I mean, crying, boo-hoo, whining, crying. No care about the victims, nothing. They're just crying because they might have a cousin who's illegal or some shit like that, who's trying to hide from ICE. But they forget about all the victims of these crimes that's going on. And it's just like the liberal side of the aisle. They don't care about the victims at all. They just care about whether Trump is following, dotting every I and crossing every T to get these guys out of the country And I'm glad they're pushing back against these rogue judges. Because after all, what the hell are those judges going to do? What you going to do? You're not going to come to the White House and try to arrest the president. Just get out of the way. And it's way past time for the Supreme Court to weigh in on these goddamn rogue judges. What the hell are they doing? What is the Supreme Court doing that's more important than telling these local and district regional judges to shut the hell up and get out of the way and stay in their lane, right? Because you can't be some podunk judge in some district and then make a national a ruling that affects the whole nation. That's just bullshit. Absolutely not. So the Supreme Court needs to weigh in. Justice Roberts, get off your ass and tell these guys to back down, man. That's what you really need to do.
Jennifer.
One more on the tariffs. Can you say what the latest thinking is on the start date? I know you were just in the Oval. Are they all going to take effect this week on the reciprocal tariffs? And whenever they start, is that enough time for companies and everyone involved to adjust to that start date?
My understanding is that the tariff announcement will come tomorrow. They will be effective immediately. And the president has been teasing this for quite some time, as you know. He's talked a lot about April 2nd as Liberation Day in America. It would be taking place today if not for April Fool's Day. But tomorrow will be the day, and he's been talking about it for a while. And as a result, you've seen these companies make commitments to investing right here in the United States. Jasmine.
Thank you so much. I wonder, back on tariffs, what, if any, market indicators is the White House looking for to see if this tariffs plan is successful down the line?
Well, look, the president has been asked and answered this question about the stock market and whether he's watching it. And I've said, and he has said, the market is a snapshot in time. Yesterday, Dow futures were up. And there's been a lot of talk about the market, and it was up yesterday. So look, the president wants to ensure that all Americans make out well, particularly Main Street. That's the focus of these tariffs. But as I've said repeatedly, just like they were in his first term, Wall Street will be just fine. Shelby.
Thanks. A bipartisan pair of senators sent a letter to the president today arguing that the recent strikes in Yemen are emboldening the Houthis and saying that Congress has not authorized war against them. Is the administration planning to consult with Congress at some point or going forward regarding the strikes, and any response on the letter?
Well, I would absolutely reject Congress's claims. Who made those claims in Congress?
Senator Jeff Merkley and Rand Paul.
Okay, well, I would absolutely reject those claims. These Houthi strikes have been incredibly successful. Last time I was at this podium, there were more than 100 successful strikes. There have now been over 200 successful strikes against the Houthis. Iran is incredibly weakened as a result of these attacks. And we have seen they've taken out Houthi leaders. They've taken out critical members who were launching strikes on naval ships and on commercial vessels. And this operation will not stop until the freedom of navigation in this region is restored, which is a critical principle. And this president stands behind our Defense Department, who's doing a tremendous job.
Are they going to, is the White House going to confer with Congress going forward on this?
I would have to ask our team here at the White House, but the president is well within his authority, as is the Secretary of Defense. Again, these are defensive strikes. The Houthis have been launching attacks on U.S. naval vessels and commercial ships for quite some time. Go ahead.
Caroline,
Yeah.
The pause on the Canadian and Mexican tariffs, the fentanyl tariffs, that's set to expire tomorrow. Is the president considering extending that pause?
Look, I will let the president speak on the specifics of the tariffs tomorrow. But as for fentanyl, we have seen this has certainly caused a national security crisis here in the United States. Fentanyl continues to be the #1 killer of young people in this country, and the president is very much focused on that. Deanna.
Thank you, Caroline. The president recently signed an executive order on making D.C. safe and beautiful. On the campaign trail, he talked about making New York great again. Does he have any plans on establishing a similar task force? Has he been pressuring Governor Hochul in any way in his conversations about New York and lowering crime?
Well, he has been in correspondence with Governor Hochul quite a bit on the issue of crime, also on the issue of congestion pricing, and so many other issues that are facing New Yorkers. And he wants New York to clean up their streets just as he does here in Washington, D.C. He also speaks to Mayor Adams as well. So he's engaged with state and local leaders across the entire country to ensure they're doing their part to help American citizens in each and every state, regardless of if it's a red state or a blue state.
A question on Russia. Yesterday, the Russian government said that their new goal is 160,000 conscripts for the war. Has the president seen that number? And does he have any response given his recent conversations on peace talks?
Well, I can tell you what the president said last night, and that is he is frustrated with leaders on both sides of this war. He wants this war to end. There are men that are dying on both sides, and it's been going on for far too long. Our team continues to be engaged with the Russians as we are with the Ukrainians, and the president continues to be very, very much engaged on this topic every single day.
Sure.
Neither the Russians or the Ukrainians want to stop this war. I'm wondering is who's benefiting from this war? You know, they're just killing their population off, but there's certain money probably behind it somewhere. I know about Zelensky. He's got billions that he's siphoned off from America already, I believe. There's just no way all that money we send over there, he doesn't have a little bit in his pocket for when this war is over. That's just my opinion. You know, there's no way to have facts, but I would imagine if the Doge team or somebody try to do a forensic audit or where all that money went, we'll find out that we don't know where it all went. You know, and as far as Putin's concerned, I think he long since stopped caring about how many people he puts in harm's way to get what he wants. You know, that's never been his style. So I don't know. I mean, it was optimistic. The president was optimistic that he can just talk to these guys and get them to stop killing each other. But I think every day that passes and the bullets keep flying, I think that's less and less possible.
The president said over the weekend that he couldn't care less if prices went up on foreign cars because people buy more American cars. There's been consensus from a lot of economists that these tariffs could raise prices on other goods as well. Is the president comfortable with Americans on Main Street paying more because of these tariffs?
The president is doing everything he can, and this entire administration is doing everything we can to bring down the cost of living in this country. An inflation mess that was fueled by the previous administration's reckless spending, overburdensome regulations that this administration is focused on slashing every single day. I just read you a statistic just from the Environmental Protective Agency alone. We're saving taxpayers money that's ultimately going to drive down inflation, and we're unleashing the might of our energy industry, which will bring down prices as well. To the heart of your question, because this is very important to the American people, you should trust what this president did for you in his first term. He effectively utilized tariffs while driving down inflation. It was a record low 1.4% when he left office, and he's focused on getting back to that. It's unfortunate the previous administration left us in this mess. Sure.
Representative Anna Paulina Luna left the Freedom Caucus over their lack of support for her bill that would allow new parents to proxy vote around 12 weeks around the birth of their baby. Does the president support that bill?
I'm not sure. I haven't actually talked to the president about that bill, but I certainly can and can get a take on if he supports it or not.
Thank you. And one more. The DC Circuit ruled last week that the president can fire holdover Biden appointees of independent agencies. Will this ruling empower President Trump to dismiss more federal employees?
Well, the president has given the responsibility to his cabinet secretaries to hire and fire at their respective agencies, and they reserve that right. You saw the Secretary of Health and Human Services announced more layoffs today. This is all part of the administration's effort for a mass reduction in force in the federal bureaucracy here in Washington, D.C. to save American taxpayers money. As for agencies within the president's executive authority, the president retains that right. And we've seen there have been bureaucrats at some of these agencies that have been trying to act independent. They need to remember who they work for. It's the executive of the executive branch. You look at the United States Institute of Peace, for example. There was a little bit of a standoff with bureaucrats over there who didn't want to realize who they work for, and that is Donald Trump. And President Trump is focused on streamlining these agencies to save American taxpayers money, and he has every right to do that.
Caroline.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah.
In Gaza, the bodies of
Yeah, before we get off of that and go into Gaza, now I worked for the government for almost 40 years, and there was a lot of reductions in forces. There was a lot of base closures. There was a lot of stuff we all had to live through, wondering whether we would have a job the next day after these reductions in forces. It's nothing unique about having a reduction in force for the government. I mean, just like in private industry, they fire people all the time. I mean, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across the country every year get fired, for one reason or the other in private industry. The thing that most people use as an excuse, well, it's the government, as if the government can't fire people because it's like a jobs program. It doesn't matter whether the people are productive or not, or whether the government wants to readjust how it's spending its money. Since it's a government job, somehow a person is owed a lifelong term of employment. It's just not true. It's never been true. So I don't know why. I mean, I do know why the liberal media keeps harping on this. Yeah, it's sad. The thing that the administration has done wrong, the number one thing is that Elon Musk looked a little too happy that people were getting fired. I think he toned that shit down a little bit now, right? No hacksaws and chainsaws coming out. Even if you're saying you're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, a person who's getting fired, who was just some happy-go-lucky employee, doesn't see themselves as a part of waste, fraud, and abuse, right? They just see themselves as a person who's going to be on the street looking for a job. And to see a man with a hacksaw and chainsaws being happy, the richest man in the world, it was just a bad look. I don't know why they didn't rein his ass in a long time ago. Now, does that justify anything that they're doing to Tesla? Absolutely not. And I hope the people they catch get 20 years or more in jail. And, because there's no justification for that. Absolutely. And these are the same people who wanted people in January 6th to go down and stay in jail forever. So, and the irony of it is most of the people who own Teslas are liberal Democrats. It's just crazy. Just crazy. All right, so let's go on to Gaza. Let's see what they got to say.
15 rescuers have been found in their sort of ambulances where they were apparently killed by Israeli forces. Just wondering if the White House is going to be calling on Israel to investigate that and to try and avoid similar casualties involving rescue workers in the future.
Well, as for the specific situation you just mentioned, I'll talk to the president about it and our national security team. What I can tell you is what I've spoken with the president on. He very much remains committed to backing Israel. And it was only because of this president and his team's leadership that we had a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, that we were able to bring many hostages home. And the president made it very clear to Hamas, you get the hostages out, all of them, or there will be hell to pay. And Hamas is certainly witnessing what it feels like for all hell to be paid. And the president supports Israel's right to defend itself.
Any progress at all on a ceasefire at the moment, as far as the president's concerned?
The president and his team continue to be engaged on this every single day. Sure. Go ahead.
So I'm just wondering, related to that, if you have an approximate date for the president's first foreign trip. I think there was a little confusion yesterday about what month he was talking about. And then will he need a ceasefire to be in place or closer, either in Gaza or in Ukraine, before that takes place?
The president will be heading to Saudi Arabia in May. As for specific dates and details, we will be reading those out to you as soon as we possibly can. I know our teams are working on the details of that trip. And then again, as for a ceasefire, the president's made it clear that's what he wants to see in Russia and Ukraine, and his team continues to be engaged on it every day. Kelly.
Signal, you said case closed yesterday. As that case was closed, do you have anything that you can share about what was learned, how this can be avoided in the future, any sort of findings from that investigation?
The case is closed, and the president continues to have confidence in his national security advisor. Yes, Kelly.
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 Thanks, Caroline. So
Sorry,
the president has said.
Ed will come to you after.
The president has
I'm
said.
glad you're so eager to ask a question.
Liberation Day.
Yes, it is.
Caroline, the president has said foreign
Tomorrow.
countries and companies will eat the cost of tariffs. In his speech on Inauguration Day, he said, quote, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens.
Right.
So then why did he have to tell the domestic automakers not to raise prices?
Well, that was a private conversation that was had. I'm not sure if that comment was made or was not made. But as for what the president said in his Inauguration Day speech, he's absolutely correct. A tariff will be a tax on these foreign nations, these foreign companies. And if they want to be absolved of that tariff, then they can come here to the United States of America to do business, bring their jobs here. Edward, go ahead.
Thank you. So Canadians have been negotiating with the Commerce Secretary over the trade, the tariffs. How many companies are mutually talking with the U.S. or countries are mutually talking with the U.S. to lower tariffs?
I don't have a specific number, but I can tell you there have been quite a few countries that have called the president and have called his team in discussion about these tariffs. But again, there's one country the president cares most about, and it's the United States of America, and doing what's best for the people who elected him to this office to restore their jobs, their wealth, and their prosperity. I'm looking at the clock. I have a hard out today. I have a hard out today because I'm actually heading over to the State Department with the First Lady of the United States. She will be delivering remarks at 1 o'clock this afternoon at the 19th International Women of Courage Award ceremony with our great Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. That starts at 1. This is the 5th year Mrs. Trump is participating and standing with brave women leaders who embody American values abroad. And the First Lady in her remarks today will highlight the profound connection between the love and courage that will be shown by this year's honorees. I encourage everybody to tune in at 1 o'clock, and then we'll see you all tomorrow for Liberation Day. Thanks, guys.
Man, see, that's another good press conference. I mean, listen, whether you like everything she said or not, it's deliberate, straight to the point. And it's, I mean, it's just the way things are. Elections have consequences. This is the way Trump wants to run this thing. Champ talked about a little bit. I got a comment here where, didn't they grab innocent people based off tattoos? That's what the media says, right? So the media says that's what they did. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know what kind of investigation they done on each individual. They didn't really share that information. And if you look at the sources of the media, they don't never have anything good to say about this administration. So I would imagine they didn't just throw somebody into that place just based on tattoos. They probably have some other evidence as well. It's more likely that that's true. And this so-called innocent guy they have in there, she covers that in the press conference. If you read the certain media, the guy was like just a great dad who just happened to be illegal and all that kind of stuff. Well, she said if you dig deeper, you'll find out that this guy had his hooks in anything. The only thing I will agree with in terms of that place down in El Salvador, it's a torture chamber, and I think they're using it as a deterrent, because even if you're the most hardened criminal, you don't want to be in that place. They say when those people stacked up, no shirts on, they don't have no beds. They have to sleep together. All those men sleep together in those cages. They're all sleeping in those cages. And if you look at their faces, if you ever saw some of those guys on the street, you run across the street when they were out free. But if you look at their faces, you know that they go under an extreme breaking process in that place. Those men are broken, man. You can see those men are broken. Even the toughest guys are broken. It's incredible. Let me tell you, I have mixed emotions that they let everybody see it. But the truth of the matter is that kind of transparency never happens. It's like seeing an execution in real time, because if you spend any time in there, you're going to spend the rest of your life in that jail. They're not letting nobody out, right? So there's people probably dying in those jails down there, and you'll never know it. So anyway, it's you mean business. Just deport me back to my home country, and I'll take my chances out there on the street at home instead of putting me in that kind of jail. Anyway, that's another press conference. Go check it out, the replay. I left a link in the comments here when you see to my show yesterday on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. Tomorrow's my sports show at 7 o'clock Eastern. Why don't you pop in on that? And with that, our pain, marriage, politics, and sports. Over and out.